West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est long, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. We are one day further towards genuine catastrophe. As a huge swath of the country has been hit by winter storms and record low temperatures below zero across more than a dozen states. Now, millions of Americans are experiencing power outages, but in Texas, there is a near total breakdown. Most of Texas is on its own energy grid, run by the organization called the Electric Reliability Council of Texas, or ERCOT, and it is disconnected from the two main power grids in the rest of the country, the Eastern and Western interconnects. And it is the most deregulated energy market in the country. All sorts of interesting idiosyncrasies to how it operates. Its power infrastructure is simply not designed to withstand days of freezing temperatures, which are expected to continue until the weekend. ERCOT officials said today they expect the blackouts in Texas to last at least until tomorrow. The crisis is the product of both extreme weather, a kind of black swan event, and also real governing failure. And the person at the head of the Texas government took the time to go on Fox News last night to push the big lie that Republicans and right-wing media have been pushing for days. A brazen, jaw-dropping lie that the hippie libs and their clean energy are to blame for the devastation in Texas.
The Green New Deal would be a deadly deal for the United States of America. Texas is blessed with multiple sources of energy, such as natural gas and oil and nuclear, as well as solar and wind. But you saw from what Trace said, and that is our wind and our solar got shut down, and they were collectively more than 10% of our power grid. And that thrust Texas into a situation where it was lacking power in a statewide basis. If the Biden administration is going to try to eradicate fossil fuels in the United States, every state is going to constantly have challenges like what America has seen take place in Texas right now.
That's not true, just to be clear, the idea that wind and solar completely went out and thrust the state into that situation. In fact, the governor was spinning a different tale when he spoke to a local news outlet just before he went on Fox News, not mentioning wind or solar or green energy at all, instead placing the blame on natural gas.
The companies that generate the power, their operations have frozen up or have tripwired and are non-operational. That is the lead reason why there is a shortage of power for the people who are lacking power right now. There is an additional reason causing a lack of natural gas arriving to power generation centers across the state, and that's because the ability to both manufacture and to ship and transport natural gas has been frozen also. It's frozen in the pipeline. It's frozen at the rig. It's frozen in the transmission line.
Natural gas is frozen everywhere. That's a big part of the problem, the catastrophe. That's what he's telling Texans. And he goes on national Fox News to say that it's the Green New Deal. This is the crazy blame game the governor of Texas is playing while his constituents are freezing in their homes without power or heat, some for the third straight day.
How much power have you had in the last 3 days?
Okay, so that's probably like total of maybe 4 hours.
4 hours in 3 days.
4 hours in 3 days.
We're huddled under all the blankets that we have. It's 45 in our house.
Steve Rivera and his wife seeking shelter with the only neighbor they knew that had a fireplace.
She hasn't been able to eat regularly and take her medications.
For 11 members of the Adela family, the only way to stay warm is inside a church van parked in their driveway.
How many kids are there? How are you guys doing?
Inside, 7 kids, ages 3 months to 11 years old.
Well, it started, see, I have 3 cats and a dog, some kids. We lost power, put the kids in a different location with family members, and then we've just been sleeping in the closet with my pets. Can't find gas anywhere. I don't even know what city I'm in right now, to be honest.
Hell. Yeah, hell. Sure hell. Yeah. And then that's why I say somebody should be held accountable.
But to the purveyors of the big lie, Republicans like Greg Abbott and his friends on Fox News, this very real and acute suffering is just a vehicle for their political objections. They are trying to convince Americans that the state of J.R. Ewing and the Houston Oilers, the capital of American fossil fuel extraction, was actually covertly turned into a lefty bastion of green energy while no one was looking, and that's the source of the problem.
So, unbeknownst to most people, the Green New Deal came to Texas. The power grid in the state became totally reliant on windmills. Then it got cold and the windmills broke, because that's what happens in the Green New Deal. You're without power. Millions are still without power tonight.
Yes, while you weren't looking, you hear that quote? Unbeknownst to most people, Texas became some sort of hippie commune, totally reliant on windmills and rainbows and flower power. Totally reliant. He actually said that about Texas. Was it unbeknownst to the Republican leadership of the state, who have occupied nearly every statewide office in Texas for decades? A Democrat has not won statewide in decades? Did Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez 10 years ago at the tender age of 21 parachute into the state of Texas to put up windmills under cover of night? Were she and Al Gore driving through the Permian Basin, secretly unplugging all the rigs? How stupid does Tucker think his audience is exactly? It's just a lie. It's not a dishonest mischaracterization or spin or omission. It's just a straight out ridiculous lie. Now, Texas does have a lot of wind power. It's true. But wind power makes up only a fraction of Texas's energy in the winter. Governor Abbott said himself, wind and solar only make up 10% of the grid. There are real material consequences here, as so many people go into a third freezing night. The immediate priority must be figuring out a way to get power and heat to people who desperately need it, as well as clean water, amidst a severe weather event and infrastructure that is simply overwhelmed by it right now.
It is Thursday, the 18th of February of 2021, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English Bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. A little bit of frozen jambalaya, a little bit of frozen spice in your life. Well, it's not really good to make humor of the tragedy that has befallen folks down in areas where I guess they're not used to getting that kind of snow or ice or weather yet. Now, I'm not blaming Texans. I do blame Texas. Of course, we all do. And we know who Texas is at the moment. And it's the big liars like Abbott and the rest of the GOP who have ruled the roost with their tin pot dictatorship masked as a democracy. Anyway, they are wholly to blame, and of course they're going to try to big lie their way out of it. It is truly, as Chris Hayes mentioned at the top, a vehicle for their political objectives. So it behooves them. And yet, real people are suffering, aren't they? Real people are dying. I guess something could be done. We'll have to wait to vote for it if there's any of them left. Of course there will be. So, I'm just curious, though, because New Mexico is right there by Texas, and they get snow. Arkansas gets snow. Arkansas has snowplows. Texas doesn't. So it's just, libertarian utopia. Like Ron Paul said, selfishness is good. Why should I have to care about anybody else? I'm just caring about myself. Well, Ron, the problem is if you only care about yourself, I think you're going to be going to the neighbor that has a fireplace too. On the other hand, maybe Ron has a fireplace and he's going to make sure no one else around uses it, and he's going to make sure at gunpoint. And that then is, the destruction of society, which they all want. Well, Texas did extend tax breaks to companies from other states to come down to Texas, mostly because Texas doesn't have any taxes, very little. And in that, it's a gamble. You look, it's a libertarian paradise. Come on down here. Everything's unregulated. We don't make you do the right thing. I mean, that's not our purpose. Just make as much money as you can. And if a tragedy befalls the state, the people will pay. We've structured it that way. Yeah, that's right. So I guess this energy provider that runs the energy in the state is what? Enron's baby? Or is it Enron itself morphed into, a state operator? What's up with that? Actually, is it true? Because 5 of the 7 directors of ERCOT live out of state. Interesting, isn't it? So they got the magic of the market. And the magic of the market sometimes, the reason that we like science more than magic is because magic. What is that? It's nothing. It's it has the same equivalency as choosing the colors on the jockey at the horse race, or going and poring over the racing form and looking at weight and mud conditions, racing conditions, and how much weight the horse is carrying, and previous wins and losses, and then that has as much weight as just choosing the colors that the jockey is wearing. Magic. The magic of the market. That's what they're laying their hats on. No, it is just a quest for unbridled power. Even during a pandemic and a polar vortex. Yeah, how'd that happen? Denying the inevitable. So 10 years ago, of course, as we all now know, Texas went through a similar, not as grave, of course, of a storm. And they just said, they didn't say let's go to windmills, okay? Let's all run everything on windmills, which would have been nice. But still, they didn't say, let's go to totally solar, which, would still be nice. No, they said, let's winterize our infrastructure on our energy grid. But no, the great masters of the market said, no, that would cost too much money. Now, we weighed how many, once-in-a-lifetime storms that might come here versus us making a bunch of money. And why should we prepare for once-in-a-lifetime storm when we might be dead? See, you can't force business people to do the right thing. Or, I'm sorry, you can't expect a business person to do the right thing. You have to force them. That's why you have government. They're not going to do it out of the goodness of their heart. How many enlightened despots do we have in the world now? How many captains of industry run their lives as noblesse oblige? None. It's all me, me, me. I need more, and I'm going to take it. Which also begs a question here as well. They pass all that stuff on to the ratepayer anyway. What's it going to be? Half a cent? Oh, well, they promised, I guess. Well, they want to be a republic. A lot of people saying, let Texas secede, and I say no. Texas is this close, and I'm holding my thumb and forefinger, in a pinching distance. They are that close, Texas is, to becoming blue. We've been working hard, and our friends there have been working hard, And now is not the time to cut them loose because now we can kick the Republicans back? No, we kick them out. We don't kick the whole state, please. It's like, we're going to forget about the South. Well, what about all the work that's been going on for decades and decades and decades and decades in the South? Okay. We want a more perfect union. Not one that's less perfect with, in other words, not being a union. Come on. We are Americans. We don't let this stuff happen. Even though, I got to say, one part of the political spectrum seems particularly susceptible to brainwashing. And then they accuse us of it. Well, I don't know. Jesus. I think when you're, pretty much conditioned to be anti-authoritarian, you also question, what authority is feeding you a bunch of nonsense? Well, we could go on and on and on about all of that rigmarole, and we haven't even talked about Rush Limbaugh dying, thank God. I don't know, do we thank God? I don't know, maybe that's magic too. Maybe we just, nature canceled Rush Limbaugh. And it's about time, because that guy was a hateful mofo. And I'm sorry people say we're dancing on his grave. Well, you know what? We are. In Jewish culture, there's a whole thing about dancing on a person's grave. And there's a saying, and I'm not going to be able to do it in Hebrew, but the saying somewhat goes like, may their name be forgotten forever because of what hateful, terrible people they were in life. So there. He deserves to have his grave danced upon because that guy, I don't know. I had too many friends dying from a disease that was ignored. It was all a hoax. And then when it wasn't a hoax, it was just a gay disease. It only happened to gay people. And that was okay, apparently. And then when little kids started dying from it, it had nothing to do with their sexual proclivities. People started going, oh my God, it was the gays' fault too. Yeah, so, and that was Reagan perpetuating that BS. So I'm a little upset about that. And Limbaugh perpetuated that lie with his hateful, vile radio personality. And it was not a joke. Ignore the obvious for political objectives, and real people die. We don't vote for that. We're Americans. Okay, what's on the rest of the menu here? Starting off in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, as if all that we just mentioned was bad enough. Frustrated U.S. military commanders scramble to knock down internet rumors as thousands of troops refuse the vaccine. I think we have a major purge that we need to conduct throughout our whole body politic, all of our law enforcement, all of our military. I think we need to get re-educated. And the way to get re-educated is to first become educated about how our government and democracy works and the society that we're trying to achieve. It seems like a large amount of the population has no idea what that is. Well, enough of that sermon. The share of U.S. workers holding multiple jobs is rising. I remember that during Reagan, too, Yeah, I had 3 jobs. And Trump's acts as president are fair game for criminal charges, and they are, and we're going to break that down a little explainer. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where an Indian journalist was acquitted of defamation after she accused a former editor-turned-politician of sexual harassment. And Estonia's foreign intelligence agency said that Russia is counting on the COVID-19 pandemic to weaken the West. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. And if you would then look across the page to the left, right there is our link to our Patreon page. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio and possibly send us the equivalent of what you might spend on an espresso-type coffee drink and send those funds to us once a month, we stretch those dollars beyond compare because we have a lot of experience doing so. We then pay our bills and also, as an aside, get the needed machinery and attendant software to continue this little powerhouse of resistance we got going. And we are then able to fulfill our civic duty because of your generosity. And fulfilling our civic duty as the founders originally intended is part of our mission statement. And we have to fulfill it. We must. And thank you. Thank you for your generosity. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, go to @NetrootsRadio. How simple is that? Thank you, Tom, for taking care of that. And you can follow me at Justice Putnam. N before the M, man spelled backwards. And I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's about 10 minutes before showtime. I get that linked up on Twitter and other social media platforms. Apparently not in Australia, though. Thanks, Jeff. Little punk. Anyway, that gets posted up and distributed where Facebook would allow it when I post it on Facebook. But anyway, I do that about 10 minutes before showtime, so look for it. You can also follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West. And most importantly in this spiel, well, besides asking for money, is pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, iTunes, iHeart, YouTube, wherever podcasts can be found. Okay. Oh, let me mention also, there's a couple of you who have requested to get bumper stickers sent to you. Excuse the delay. We've had a bit of a problem here. I still have to get to the post office to do that. And so it's been a bit difficult in terms of time and weather. So I will get those to you. Rest assured, they should be coming shortly. Okay. I would say it's in the mail, but it's not quite in the mail yet. I'm going to get it in the mail. Okay, let's, where is it? Here's the tab. All right, I knew I had it somewhere. Everything's out of order today. What's up with that? This first offering here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy comes from Lolita C. Baldor from the Associated Press. By the thousands, U.S. service members are refusing or putting off the COVID-19 vaccine as frustrated commanders scramble to knock down internet rumors and find the right pitch that will persuade troops to get the shot. Wait a second, the right pitch? What kind of military do we have now? You tell them. What's in order? You're now going to request? Some Army units are seeing as few as 1/3 agree to the vaccine. Military leaders searching for answers believe they have identified one potential convincer: an imminent deployment. See? Navy sailors on ships heading out to sea last week, for example, were choosing to take the shot at rates exceeding 80 to 90%. Air Force Major General Jeff Taliaferro, Vice Director of Operations for the Joint Staff, told Congress on Wednesday yesterday that very early data suggests that up to 2/3 of service members offered the vaccine have accepted. Why is it always the toxic third that causes the problems? I've been bringing this up since I was a mere child. Why is it always the toxic third? Now, of course, that 2/3 is higher than the rate for the general population, which a recent survey by the Kaiser Family Foundation put at roughly 50%. But the significant number of forces declining the vaccine is especially worrisome because troops often live, work, and fight closely together in environments where social distancing and wearing masks at times are difficult. The military's resistance also comes as troops are deploying to administer shots at vaccination centers around the country and as leaders look to American forces to set an example for the nation. Well, I guess I hate, I'm not dissing the military, but why don't we up the requirements for who gets to be in the military? If you want the military to be examples for the rest of the country, then maybe you better have some stalwart types to represent that. Service leaders have vigorously campaigned for the vaccine. They have held town halls, written messages to the force, distributed scientific data, posted videos, and even put out photos of leaders getting vaccinated. For weeks, the Pentagon insisted it did not know how many troops were declining the vaccine. Yesterday, Wednesday, they provided few details on their early data. Officials from individual military services, however, said in interviews with the AP that refusal rates vary widely depending on a service member's age, unit, location, deployment status, and other intangibles. You mean like whether they were listening to Rush Limbaugh or not? The variations make it harder for leaders to identify which arguments for the vaccine are most persuasive. I would say it's an order, but that's just me. The Food and Drug Administration has allowed emergency use of the vaccine, so it is voluntary. But Defense Department officials say they hope that soon that may change. We cannot make it mandatory yet, Vice Admiral Andrew Lewis, commander of the Navy's Second Fleet, said last week. But I can tell you, we're probably going to make it mandatory as soon as we can, just like we do with the flu vaccine. Jonelle Marti and Lucia Murtakani of Reuters bring us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Metro's Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. The share of Americans working more than one job to make ends meet has been growing over the past 2 decades, and the pay from second jobs make up a substantial share of workers' earnings, according to a paper published by the U.S. Commerce Department yesterday, Wednesday. An estimated 7.8% of U.S. workers had more than one job as of the first quarter of 2018, up from 6.8% in 1996, according to data unveiled by the Census Bureau, which provides a more detailed analysis of multiple job holders than was previously available. The findings were based on data from 18 states. The earnings from the workers' second jobs make up an average 28% of their total earnings, showing that workers are likely relying on that pay. In general, women were more likely to have multiple jobs than men because that's how it's always been, right? They also noted that multiple job holding occurred at all levels of income, but was more common for, wait for it, low-wage workers. Those juggling more than one occupation earned less, on average, than people who had only one job. People working in healthcare and food services were more prone to having more than one job than people working in other industries. And that data could add more impetus to President Joe Biden and his fellow Democrats to push the minimum wage to $15 per hour from the current rate of $7.25 by 2025. The Census Bureau researchers looked at the number of people who held more than one job in a quarter, holding at least one job for the entire 3 months. Jan Wolf of Reuters brings us this final offering in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Donald Trump's legal troubles are far from over despite his acquittal in the U.S. Senate impeachment trial. The U.S. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell noted just moments after voting to acquit Trump, saying the courts are the proper forum for holding the former president accountable for his role in the deadly January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol by Trump supporters. Now, here's an explanation of how Trump leaving office affects his criminal and civil exposure. Can Trump be prosecuted for acts he engaged in as president? Well, yes. Now that Trump has left office, any misconduct he engaged in as president is fair game for criminal charges, said Brian Colt, a constitutional law professor at Michigan State University. Do Trump's official acts enjoy special protection from prosecution? Well, no. In some contexts, U.S. courts have drawn a distinction between a president's official acts and actions unrelated to the job for president. For example, in a 1982 case, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that in civil lawsuits, presidents are immune from liability arising from their official acts. But if Trump violated criminal laws, the fact that he took those actions while president would not shield him from liability, said Randall Eliason, a law professor at George Washington University and a former federal prosecutor. As a practical matter, prosecutors will be careful not to criminalize policy disagreements or exercises of discretion, he said. What criminal investigations does Trump face so far? For more than 2 years, Cyrus Vance, the Manhattan district attorney, has been probing Trump's real estate business for possible insurance and tax fraud. There is a separate civil investigation by New York State Attorney General Letitia James into whether the business falsely reported property values. The Trump organization has denied in court filings that the company falsified property values and has rejected other allegations made by Vance and James, who are both Democrats. Not Democratic office holders, Democrats. Trump, a Republican, has said the probes are politically motivated because he's a mobster. Prosecutors in Georgia's biggest county recently opened a criminal investigation, and that scared that state so much that they're going to try to change their constitution to make sure no black woman ever brings charges against a white man. And Trump faces several civil lawsuits, including 2 defamation lawsuits filed by women who accused him of sexually assaulting them before he was elected president in 2016, and Trump has denied the encounters. Then those lawsuits proceeded during Trump's presidency, but could unfold more quickly now that he is out of office. And there's a few more instances in this explainer, and I would suggest you go check it out in the show notes and links diary. Why don't we get to our break now, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You were listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American 60-Second Science. I'm Aline Augenbraun. Dogs were the first animals to be domesticated, and they stuck with us as we changed lifestyles from hunting-gathering to farming to city living.
The dog is a species that is intimately linked to human history.
Anders Bergstrom, a postdoc at the Francis Crick Institute in London. He and his colleagues studied the genomes of 27 ancient dog bones dug up around the world. They found that by 11,000 years ago,
we see that the dog started to diversify genetically. So we find evidence of at least 5 major lineages of dogs already at this time.
Dog remains have been found in Europe, Asia, and the Americas in a pattern similar to how humans moved and mixed.
To a large degree, the history of dogs seems to have been shaped by human history. So likely reflecting how when humans moved, they would have brought their dogs with them.
Ancient humans clearly found dogs to be very useful.
In the Arctic, there's evidence that sled dogs actually emerged very early, and people used them for the particular purpose of sledding, perhaps as early as 10,000 years ago.
A few modern breeds, like the African Basenji, New Guinea singing dog, or Australian dingo, are similar to one of the 5 ancient lineages. Most other modern breeds derive at least in part from European dogs, which came to dominate dog genomes.
If you go back 4,000 or 5,000 years ago, there's a great diversity of dogs in Europe. But at some point, there was probably a single population that expanded and basically replaced other populations in Europe. So this was something that we did not predict, and you couldn't really see just from studying archaeology. But when we look at the DNA, we see that there's all this diversity in the past that is not represented in present-day dogs.
The study is in the journal Science, where you'll find maps of dog migrations over time. One odd finding. About 11,000 years ago, it looks like dogs spread more widely than humans did.
That's actually a process we don't really understand. So how could the dog spread so quickly and widely? We're not aware of any human migrations at this time that could have facilitated the spread of the dog. But somehow it spreads very quickly to human groups all across the world. Perhaps because it was a very useful thing for these early human hunter-gatherer groups.
Humans were also useful to dogs. Prehistoric Petcos didn't exist, so dogs probably ate what humans did. And as humans started to farm, both species quickly adapted to digest more grains. The number of copies of a starch-digesting gene in both humans and dogs increased in the generations following the invention of agriculture.
Yeah, so that's a very striking example of convergent evolution between humans and dogs. So in a way, it's kind of interesting to think of the dog as a kind of an evolutionary experiment that runs alongside human history and undergoes the same lifestyle changes that we do.
For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Aline Augenbraun.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Welcome to A Cup of Health with CDC, a weekly feature of the MMWR, the Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report. I'm your host, Dr. Kathleen Dooling. From a very young age, we're encouraged to eat fruits and vegetables. Unfortunately, many Americans are not getting the message. Dr. Seung-Hee Lee Kwan is with CDC's National Center for Chronic Disease Prevention and Health Promotion. She's joining us today to discuss the importance of eating enough fruits and vegetables. Welcome to the show, Seung-Hee.
Thank you for having me.
Seung-Hee, what is the recommended amount of fruits and vegetables?
The federal guidelines recommend that adults consume at least 1.5 cups to 2 cups of fruit and 2 to 3 cups of vegetables each day. This is for adults who get less than 30 minutes of physical activity a day. Adults who are more physically active need more calories and thus should be eating more fruits and vegetables. 1 cup is about 12 strawberries or 1 large tomato.
How many people consume the recommended amount of fruits and vegetables?
We found that very few adults are getting enough fruits and vegetables. Just 12% are eating the recommended amount of fruits, and less than 1 in 10 eat enough vegetables. And consumption is lower among men, young adults, and adults living in poverty.
Why is eating a diet rich in fruits and vegetables so important?
Eating a diet rich in fruits and vegetables can help with 3 things. 1, it can reduce the risk of many leading causes of illness and deaths, such as heart disease, type 2 diabetes, some cancers, and even obesity. It can also add important nutrients that are commonly missing in Americans' diet. And it can help with weight management if adults consume fruits and vegetables instead of other calorie-dense foods.
How can we meet the recommended daily intake of fruits and vegetables?
Try to fill half of your plate with fruits or vegetables at each meal or every eating occasion. Making fruits and vegetables the focal point of your meal will help you meet your recommendations. For example, recent studies have shown that adults get most of their fruit during breakfast and snacks. So you can try adding berries to your morning oatmeal or grab a piece of fresh fruit as an afternoon snack. For vegetables, most adults eat them at dinner, so try adding more into your lunch by adding a side salad or packing a snack of baby carrots or grape tomatoes.
Are canned or frozen products just as good as fresh?
All forms of fruits and vegetables count towards meeting the recommendations. For the most health benefits, make sure that the fruits and vegetables you consume have limited amount of salt, butter, sugar, or creamy sauces. When selecting canned fruits, choose the ones with lowest sugars. And for canned or frozen vegetables, choose those lower in sodium.
Where can listeners get more information about eating a healthy diet?
Listeners can go to cdc.gov/nutrition or choosemyplate.gov.
Thanks, Seung-hee. I've been talking today with Seung-hee Lee Kwon about the importance of eating a healthy diet. Eating a diet rich in fruits and vegetables can help reduce the risk of many leading causes of illness and death and add important nutrients to your diet. Make sure you're eating enough. Until next time, be well. This is Dr. Kathleen Dooling for A Cup of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
The discovery of penicillin in 1928 by Alexander Fleming was one of the greatest scientific achievements of the 20th century. It's hard to imagine a world before the development of what many consider to be miracle drugs. However, just 90 years ago, antibiotics weren't available. Thanks to antibiotics, some common illnesses such as strep throat are now easily treated, whereas in the past they often led to serious complications. Antibiotics serve an important role in keeping you and your loved ones healthy, but it's important to remember that antibiotics only treat bacterial infections. Most common infections such as colds, flu, most sore throats, bronchitis, and many sinus and ear infections are caused by viruses and do not respond to antibiotic treatment. These infections can be overcome by simply treating the symptoms and letting the illness run its course. Unfortunately, antibiotics have often been overused, resulting in decreased effectiveness and an increase in antibiotic-resistant diseases. Antibiotic resistance, or the increased ability of bacteria to survive in the presence of antibiotics, has become a major public health threat that we all need to help fight. When a person takes antibiotics, they are at risk for possibly having a bad reaction to these drugs. Some side effects can be quite serious, or even life-threatening in the case of an allergic reaction or severe diarrhea. This is why it is very important to only use antibiotics when they are absolutely needed, and not for viral infections. Talk to your healthcare professional about the best treatment for your illness. If it is caused by a virus, follow his or her recommendation for treating the symptoms. Learn more about appropriate antibiotic use and how to feel better when you don't need an antibiotic by visiting CDC's Get Smart, Know When Antibiotics Work website at cdc.gov/getsmart/community.
For the most accurate health information, visit www.cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution, and you'll get a wondiferous pair of Netroots radio stickers for application to your backpack, your bumper sticker, or your banjo. Well, it's up to you which backpack you want to put it on. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage, because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
Given that the text of the Constitution does not specifically grant Congress the power to investigate, where does Congress's power to investigate the insurrection of January 6th come from? I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. The Constitution lists the types of laws Congress can pass. For example, collect taxes, regulate commerce, establish post offices, and provide for a navy. Investigate the executive branch by creating a committee with the power to issue subpoenas, compel witnesses to appear, and produce documents. Well, that just isn't on the list. We need to go back almost 100 years to the 1920s and the Harding administration, when Congress wanted to investigate bribery at the Interior Department involving oil leases and a cover-up at the Department of Justice, what we know as the Teapot Dome scandal. One of the subpoenaed witnesses contested Congress's authority, and in 1927 the case went to the Supreme Court, which gave, and I quote, "the case earnest and prolonged consideration because the questions involved are of unusual importance and delicacy." The Supreme Court then held that although the power to investigate is not delineated in the Constitution, the power of inquiry is an essential and appropriate auxiliary to the legislative function, and so Congress has that power. Legislative oversight of the executive branch is indeed an essential pillar of democracy. Because the Supreme Court got this right almost 100 years ago, Congress can investigate the insurrection today. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
We can't just settle for disinfecting the White House after 4 years of Trump. A fundamental structural rebuild is necessary, including in healthcare, immigration, environment, civil justice, labor law, and infrastructure. But here's another huge area that must become a priority for a major policy overhaul: the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Quick, name the Ag Secretaries under Carter, Clinton, and Obama, representing 20 years that Democratic presidents had control of ag and rural policies. Few Americans can name even one because, well, what did they do? Even as crisis after crisis ripped through the farmlands and communities they were supposed to serve. Consider Barack Obama's former appointee, who Biden has chosen to serve again, Tom Vilsack. Bizarre, since he actually tried to resign as Obama's secretary, complaining, "There are days when I literally have nothing to do." Seriously? At that time, whole towns were boarding up, massive hog factories were exploiting farmers and local residents, climate change was advancing relentlessly, and, well, get to work. Vilsack did eventually find something to do. He became chief Washington lobbyist for dairy exporting corporations, drawing $1 million annual paycheck. Meanwhile, hundreds of U.S. dairy farmers are going bankrupt today under low milk price policies he sanctioned. USDA, created in 1862 by Abe Lincoln to be what he called the People's Department, could again become a transformative force for the common good. But our recent presidents have used the position to keep the corporate giants of agribusiness content and in charge. Thus, USDA's top leadership has been indifferent and hostile to the majority of workaday rural people who need an ally. This is Jim Hightower saying, so let's become that ally. To help make USDA the People's Department again, go to rootsaction.org.
Need an antidote to the progressive blues? Want some good news about how grassroots folks are rebelling against the corporate powers and winning? Well, here's an easy-to-swallow pill for you, the Hightower Lowdown. Hightower's monthly newsletter will give you the lowdown, even as it lifts you up. It's 4 pages a month, jam-packed with facts you can use, actions you can take, and Jim's own Texas humor, all for only $15 a year. To become a lowdowner, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1688. That was the day Germantown Quakers gathered to petition against slavery in the first documented anti-slavery protest in America. Quaker colonists in Barbados began to question slavery in the 1670s. By 1688, founder of Germantown, Francis Daniel Pastoris, and 3 other Quakers met at Thones Cudner's house to craft a petition. They urged their fellow congregants to abolish slavery. The petition detailed its opposition to the importation, sale, and ownership of slaves. Rooted in the Golden Rule, do unto others as they would do unto you, the men questioned why Christians would own slaves when they would not own each other. They argued that slaves had broad universal rights, including the right to engage in slave revolts in order to assure their freedom. The petition traveled its way through the Quaker network, but many felt it was too weighty a matter on which to take a position. Those Germantown settlers who felt strongly about ending slavery left the Quaker community for the Mennonites. Over the course of the next century, Quakers in Germantown would craft strong anti-slavery petitions that influenced the broad Quaker community in Philadelphia to take a formal stand. By the time of the American Revolution, Philadelphia Quakers published numerous attacks on the institution in Benjamin Franklin's newspaper. They formally banned the ownership of slaves at their Philadelphia yearly meeting in 1776. Throughout the region, Quakers routinely raised funds for those who had escaped bondage to start new lives and help them integrate into the Quaker communities. Quakers would continue to play a prominent and active role in the abolitionist movement and the Underground Railroad. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon around the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 37 degrees Fahrenheit. Looking to have quite a bit of rain, maybe with some snow mixed in. There is snow falling at elevation only just mere hundreds of feet higher than where I reside at the moment. Winds will be out of the east-southeast at 5 to 10 miles per hour, and expecting about 3/4 of an inch of rain here in where the mothership resides in Rogue River proper. Cloudy with showers tonight, lows near the mid-30s with winds light and variable, and expecting to bring another 1/4 of an inch and light rain tomorrow early, then remaining cloudy with showers in the afternoon, about 1/4 of an inch, winds out of the southwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Confirmed cases of coronavirus in Jackson County in the southern part of Oregon have now spiked to 8,004, with one more deceased, notched now at 107. Pollen is still rated as none here in the mothership area, and the air quality index for the region is moderate at 52 parts per million, because apparently people are burning wood to stay warm, and the daytime UV index is low at 2. Barometric pressure is falling at 30.26 inches. Visibility is at 5 miles, and relative humidity is at 90%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that are crowd sources from around the world. London is 50 degrees and partly cloudy. Paris is 50 with rain. Rome is 59 and fair. Kyiv is 15 degrees and mostly cloudy. Kabul is 48 and fair. Hong Kong is 58 and clear. Tokyo is 38 and clear. Sydney, Australia. We're not supposed to be getting any news from Australia, but this isn't Facebook, so we can get around that dodge. Sydney right now is 70 degrees and mostly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 46 and partly cloudy. And New York is 26 degrees Fahrenheit, and you are snowing. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that are crowdsources from around the world. Kritika Pati of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A New Delhi court acquitted a journalist of criminal defamation after she accused a former editor-turned-politician and junior external affairs minister of sexual harassment. MJ Akbar, now age 70, filed a case against journalist Priya Ramani in October of 2018, denying the allegations as false, baseless, and wild. Ramani was the first to accuse Akbar of harassment, spurring more than 20 women to come forward and allege similar accusations during his previous career as one of the country's most prominent news editors. A few days later, Akbar resigned from his post as a junior external affairs minister in 2018, becoming one of the most powerful men to step down in India's Me Too movement at the time. On yesterday, the court said even a man of social status can be a sexual harasser and that the right of reputation cannot be protected at the cost of the right to dignity. The string of allegations against Akbar began with a tweet from Ramani in October of 2018 in which she said he was the man who had harassed her in an article she wrote for Vogue India the previous year. She had not named him in that article. Then more than a dozen women, mostly journalists, who worked with Akbar or interviewed with him for jobs when he was an editor, then accused him of sexual harassment.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Jerry Tanner of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Estonia's Foreign Intelligence Agency said that Russia is counting on the COVID-19 pandemic to weaken unity in the West, which would help Moscow gain a more prominent role in international affairs and lead to declining Western influence on the global stage. The Kremlin thinks the pandemic will force Western nations to focus on domestic policy and economic problems and facilitate the emergence of populist and extremist movements, the Estonian Foreign Intelligence Service said in its annual report. For its part, Russia is prepared to add fuel to the flames to encourage these trends. The report states, therefore, 2021 will again see Russian influence operations designed to create and deepen divides within and between Western societies. The authors of the 79-page document said Russia's strategy would likely include attempts to discredit COVID-19 vaccines developed in Western countries, especially the one made by British-Swedish company AstraZeneca. Russian propaganda has labeled the vaccine AstraZeneca developed with Oxford University in England as a monkey vaccine. Thank you, Vlad. Okay, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we're going to meet up tomorrow for, oh gosh, don't we deserve it, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. And so do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.